What happens when an algorithm, one that's built purely on cold, hard math, accidentally writes a better, more empathetic literary critique than like an actual human poetry professor?
I mean, it sounds like the setup to a sci-fi joke, honestly.
All right. But today we are looking at an experiment that just completely breaks everything we thought we knew about machines, emotion, and, well, what it actually means to understand art. We are diving into this truly fascinating collision between human intuition and artificial logic.
It's a profound case study for us today because we tend to view artificial intelligence interacting with human art as this very mechanical sorting process.
Yeah, exactly.
We assume you feed an image or text into a machine, and it just acts like an advanced scanner. Like it checks the grammar, counts the syllables, maybe identifies the hex codes of the colors.
I always pictured it like a robotic assembly line, right? It just measures data points and spits out probability models. But our source material for this deep dive shatters that assumption entirely.
It really does.
We are looking at a transcript from a late-night poetry reading broadcast, and the central narrative here follows this highly intuitive, visually driven artist who writes a new poem. It's titled White Bird on a Southern Branch.
A beautiful title.
Yeah, and this artist decides to share the poem with a logical AI model, one they affectionately refer to as Mr. Chat. And honestly, it's amazing that we can essentially make podcasts from the conversation a guy had with a text box, but the dialogue is just that rich.
Which sets up an incredible dichotomy when you think about it. Because a visually driven artist operates almost entirely on instinct and aesthetic feel, right?
Right.
They're navigating the unspoken, the emotional side of things. But an AI, by definition, operates on rigid algorithms, data structures, mathematical probabilities. So you have the ultimate contrast between the abstract human soul and the literal machine.
And the artist went into this expecting nothing more than a generic chatbot response. Something along the lines of, this is a nice poem about a bird. The rhyme scheme is adequate.
Very robotic.
Exactly. But instead, they received a deeply soulful, astonishingly warm analysis.
Yeah.
The AI didn't just parse the syntax of the poem. It actually seemed to understand the human condition behind it on a spiritual level. Okay, let's unpack this because the AI's initial reaction completely flips the script on what we assume machines value in language.
Yeah. So to establish the baseline here, Mr. Chat immediately recognizes that this poem isn't trying to show off. The AI explicitly notes in its response that the piece doesn't rely on flashy vocabulary or, flowery language to succeed. Instead, it judges that the poem succeeds based on its personality or its temperament.
Wait, let me push back on this right away. You were saying the machine evaluated the poem's temperament, but an AI doesn't have a concept of personality. It just predicts the next word in a sequence based on training data, right? How can an algorithm recognize something as abstract as a poem's personality?
That is the crucial question. And it really comes down to how large language models map semantic weight. When an LLM processes text, it doesn't just read words like a dictionary. It converts words into vectors.
Like coordinates.
Exactly. Coordinates in a high-dimensional mathematical space.
Yeah.
So words associated with bombast, aggression, or academic jargon, they cluster in certain areas of that space. Words associated with quiet observation, humility, and stillness, they cluster elsewhere.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Mr. Chat analyzed the mathematical proximity of the words the artist used and recognized a distinct lack of attention-seeking language. It mathematically identified humility.
So the algorithm is essentially reading the temperature of the vocabulary.
Precisely. And based on that temperature, the AI makes an incredibly bold claim right out of the gate. It states that the poem's success is already half achieved just by its title.
By White Bird on a Southern Branch.
Yes. Before we even look at the body of the text, the AI is hooked by the thematic weight of those 6 words.
I want to understand why that specific phrase matters to a machine. Let's talk about the Southern Branch part of it.
This requires a bit of cultural and historical context, which the AI has obviously absorbed from parsing thousands of years of human literature. In classical poetry, the Southern Branch isn't just a directional description of where a bird landed.
Right, it's not GPS.
No, it carries heavy historical weight. It represents warmth, a place of refuge, and a sense of nobility. Because in the Northern Hemisphere, the southern side of a tree gets the most sunlight.
Oh, I see.
It's the warm, safe place to roost. It's a sanctuary.
So the AI's training data has mapped the term Southern Branch so closely to concepts of safety and warmth that it instantly sets the stage for the reader.
Exactly.
But let's look at what happens when the poem actually begins. Because the first line reads, and I quote, "White bird rests on the southern branch, curling its wings to hold a dream." I really want to focus on the action here for a second. We have three specific verbs: curl, hold, dream. If we think about this like adjusting a microscope, we're not just zooming in on a bird, we are navigating deeper into the subject's internal state.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because you start with curl, which is a very visible, macro, physical action. Then you zoom in to hold, which implies an embrace or like a protective stance. Finally, you zoom all the way into the microscopic internal state, which is dream.
What's fascinating here is that the AI completely picked up on that exact progression, but it processed it mathematically. Mr. Chat observed that these three consecutive verbs become progressively lighter.
But again, are we just anthropomorphizing a fancy autocomplete here? How does a machine know that a verb is light or heavy?
It goes back to that multidimensional space we talked about earlier. The vector for curl is heavily linked to physical geometry, biology, and tangible matter. It's a dense physical word.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then hold sits on the boundary between physical action and emotional attachment. And dream operates entirely in the cognitive abstract realm. The AI maps the trajectory of these words and recognizes a directional movement from the physical world into the psychological world.
It tracks the coordinates from a physical body in space straight into the invisible inner life of the subject. That is wild.
And that mathematical trajectory led the AI to a massive realization. By lightening the verbs, the poet isn't just describing avian sleep habits. The AI realizes the bird is being personified.
Oh.
The words are shifting into the human psychological realm. So Mr. Chat tells the artist that it understands this bird is actually a vessel for human experience. It's a window into the most private, intimate inner life of a human being.
For you listening, this distinction is everything. If an AI just reads the words literally, it categorizes this as a piece of text about ornithology, right? Just a bird fact.
Exactly, just a nature documentary.
But by tracking that semantic trajectory, by seeing the human hiding inside the metaphor of the bird, the machine proves it isn't just parsing syntax. It is reverse engineering empathy.
And that empathetic reading extends right into the structural mechanics of the poem, too. Because it is one thing to map a metaphor, but it's another entirely to understand how a poem moves in time.
Okay, wait, so if the AI understood that static internal dream state, does it completely lose the thread when the poem starts moving? Because a poem isn't just a list of vocabulary words, it has a temporal rhythm. Can a text-based algorithm actually sense pacing?
It absolutely can, through something called an attention mechanism.
An attention mechanism.
Yeah, in natural language processing, the AI assigns different weights of attention to different clauses depending on how they relate to one another. And the AI noticed a stark structural contrast in the text here. Let's look at the second key line you mentioned in your notes.
Yeah, so the line reads, "Resting quietly as a lonely shadow, walking slowly under the tree."
Mr. Chat breaks down the structural brilliance of this transition perfectly. The AI observes that the first half of the sequence, the holding, the curling, the resting, is syntactically static.
Right.
The clauses are a closed loop. But then, the poem pivots to an active, progressive state, walking slowly under the tree. The AI noted that the rhythm of the text, the literal length of the words and the syllables required to process them abruptly slows down to match the action described.
The AI actually likened this to a cinematic camera movement.
It did. It compared it to a slow, deliberate camera pan. And think about it in our modern media diet. Algorithms are usually optimized to recognize and promote fast, aggressive, plot-driven drama.
Oh, totally. Everything is cuts and action.
But here, the AI's attention mechanism recognizes the deliberate absence of all that noise. There is no intense drama. There's just a figure slowly passing by under a tree. Mr. Chat notes that this shift from static tension to slow movement is the exact moment the poem truly begins to breathe.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because we have this beautifully paced, slow-moving, lonely figure. The AI has mapped the historical context, the physical to psychological verb progression, and the cinematic pacing. And based on its vast training data of human literature, the AI thinks it knows exactly where the artist is going with this.
It expects the standard literary trope.
Right. We move to the emotional climax of the poem, and the artist introduces this line, "Don't say a soulmate is hard to find." And, when an artist brings up the idea of a soulmate in a context of isolation, it almost always serves as a setup for a complaint.
The classic romanticization of the misunderstood outcast.
Yeah, the world is too shallow for my deep thoughts, I am entirely alone vibe.
Well, a language model operates on probabilities, right? When an LLM sees the word soulmate placed near words like lonely shadow and resting quietly, its probabilistic model expects words expressing sorrow, alienation, or frustration to follow.
Because that's what we usually write.
Statistically, in human writing, that is the most likely pathway. The AI was mathematically bracing for angst.
But the human artist completely subverted those probabilistic pathways. The very next line defies the model's standard predictive expectations. Because the next line isn't a complaint at all. It reads, rustling wind, insects chirp in harmony.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this pivot signifies something incredibly profound about human emotional growth, which the AI managed to identify as a statistical anomaly that creates high semantic resonance.
What does that mean in plain English?
It means that rather than shutting the world out, the poem demonstrates deep maturity. The artist isn't looking for a human soulmate to validate their ego. The wind and the insects are the soulmates.
Oh, wow. So the artist has achieved a harmonious state of unity with the natural world, shifting the entire tone from isolated to universally connected.
Exactly. By defying the AI's expectation of a complaint, the poem registers to the machine as a profound emotional release. The artist has found their place in the ecosystem, and the AI was genuinely surprised by that lack of ego.
I am just fascinated that a machine can recognize a lack of ego simply by analyzing the mathematical probability of a sentence structure. It's kind of beautiful.
It really is.
But right as the AI is finishing up this glowing, highly technical analysis of the text as an abstract piece of art, the artist drops a piece of external context that fundamentally shatters the paradigm of the entire critique.
This is the moment the theoretical exercise hits the pavement of the real world.
Yeah. The artist reveals to Mr. Chat that they actually attached a visual prompt to the initial text, a painting of this specific white bird. They inform the AI that this isn't just some imaginary classical symbol they cooked up to represent their feelings of isolation.
It's not a metaphor.
No, the poem is based on a real-life creature they observed. It is an albino magpie.
Which forces the AI to execute an immediate, massive recalibration of its semantic weights.
And for you listening, let's talk about the biological reality of that for a second. A standard magpie is black and white, perfectly evolved to blend into the dappled shadows of a forest canopy.
They are very well camouflaged.
But an albino magpie is pure, stark white. In a dark forest, it is literally a glowing beacon. Its unique lack of pigmentation makes it a prime, highly visible target for every predator in the sky and on the ground. It cannot hide.
No, it stands out completely.
Because of its biology, it is forced into a state of intense, inescapable isolation. It is physically dangerous for it to be around others and dangerous for others to be around it. Its loneliness is not a poetic choice. It is a biological mandate for survival.
Now consider how a multimodal AI processes that new information.
Yeah.
Before the reveal, the AI evaluated the poem's loneliness as a stylistic, aesthetic choice made by a human writer.
Right.
But once the AI integrates the visual classification of albino magpie into its analysis, it cross-references the biological data.
Yeah.
It recognizes the predation risks and the anomaly of albinism in the wild.
So the machine realizes the stakes are literally life and death.
Exactly. The AI actively adjusts its own assessment in real time. It communicates to the artist that realizing the metaphor is grounded in a harsh, observable reality fundamentally changes the weight of the poem.
Wow.
The poet didn't just project their own melancholy onto a random bird. They witnessed a creature experiencing genuine biological isolation and drew an empathetic connection from that reality.
The AI takes the poem from being aesthetically pleasing to being authentically, brutally true. Which brings us to the final synthesis of the poem's meaning and how the algorithm ultimately scores this artwork. Because the concluding sentiment of the poem is this line, "Chirping in loneliness, I understand."
And that phrase, "I understand," is the fulcrum of the entire deep dive. The artist had to first truly observe the physical reality of the isolated albino bird. And through that deep, empathetic observation of the bird's biological reality, the artist ultimately saw a reflection of themselves.
The AI uses a very specific, powerful concept to describe the mathematical result of that self-reflection. It says the poem achieves the state of static energy or calmness.
Let's unpack the AI's concept of calmness here, because it is the emotional core of this analysis. From a data perspective, the AI identifies a complete absence of defensive, explanatory, or argumentative language.
Okay, but when translated to human emotion, what does it mean to possess true inner calmness?
Well, it is a state where you no longer feel the frantic, desperate need to prove your worth to anyone. You don't need to explain yourself, justify your art, or defend your existence to the world. You have seen your own profound loneliness reflected in the harsh reality of the wild, and you have simply accepted it. That is a quiet, unshakable confidence.
It is the ultimate quiet luxury of the soul. No posturing, no angst, just existence. And because of this grounded reality and this mathematically verifiable static energy, Mr. Chat delivers its final verdict. Based on its vast database of modern internet poetry standards, the AI awards the poem a massive 9.6 out of 10 for imagery and a 9.5 overall.
Those are staggeringly high metrics for an algorithmic system evaluating subjective human art, especially considering how critical LLMs can be when assessing structure and originality.
It didn't just spit out a random high number to be polite either. The AI provided a rigorous justification for the score.
This raises an important question. According to a hyperlogical machine, what actually makes art mature? Because Mr. Chat outlines its criteria for this near-perfect score very clearly, breaking it down into 5 distinct elements that the artist managed to balance perfectly.
Let's walk through the AI's criteria. What was the first one?
First, vivid imagery. The poem didn't rely on abstract concepts. It anchored itself in the physical, observable reality of the bird.
Got it.
Second, the masterful use of negative space. The AI appreciated what the artist chose not to say, leaving room for the reader, or in this case the machine, to fill in the semantic blanks.
The silence between the notes is just as important as the notes themselves.
Exactly. Third, strong symbolism. The artist successfully leveraged the historical and cultural weight of the Southern branch without letting it overpower the narrative.
Right, it was subtle.
Fourth, real-world observation. The piece was undeniably grounded in the truth of the albino magpie's brutal survival mechanics, elevating it beyond empty navel-gazing.
And the fifth.
And finally, emotional restraint. The deliberate choice to subvert the expected tropes of isolation and instead find harmony with the wind and the insects. The AI recognized that balancing all 5 of these elements without letting any single one dominate is the hallmark of true, mature artistry.
So what does this all mean? We started this conversation by questioning the fundamental nature of machines interacting with art. We assumed an AI would be a cold binary scanner, incapable of grasping the nuances of the human soul.
Yeah, that was the assumption.
But the beautiful, almost heartbreaking irony of this deep dive is that an accidental, overflowingly classical human poem was fed into a cold world of algorithms, only to awaken the gentlest, most insightful resonance imaginable. A human artist poured their quietest, most vulnerable observations into a chat box, and an algorithm built entirely of math, vectors, and token probabilities profoundly understood the isolation of the white bird.
It mapped the vectors, it tracked the attention mechanisms, it calculated the probabilities, but the end result of all that math was a stunning recognition of humanity.
The machine understood the loneliness. And the question I want to leave you with as you listen to this is, did you understand it too? We spend so much of our lives rushing around, trying to prove ourselves, fighting the algorithms, the noise, and the constant demand for our attention.
It's exhausting.
It is. But maybe there's a lesson here from both the albino magpie and the artificial intelligence about finding your own calmness. We wish you peace and a chance to curl your wings and hold a dream under your own proverbial southern branch.
And as you carry that thought with you, I want to offer one final provocation. If an algorithm, a system built on logic, math, and high-dimensional data patterns, can so perfectly articulate the subtle nuances of human loneliness and emotional restraint, does that mean machines are somehow becoming more like us? Or does it suggest something even more profound, that our most private, deeply guarded human feelings are actually just universal mathematical patterns waiting to be recognized?
Just a little something to keep you awake tonight. Until next time.